Welcome into another edition of Another Damn Fantasy Podcast presented by Bite Size Sports. I'm your host, Trevor Steinbacher, along my co-host every single week, Josh Lemonsan. Josh, we're drafting tonight. How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel great. I was just telling you pre-show, I had a keeper league draft last night, and I get to do this mock draft tonight. I'm in a slow picking best ball draft on Underdog, so I have all sorts of draft season fever right now. Life is good.
Absolutely. This is great. I've got actually next Wednesday during our show, I will be drafting, so hopefully I won't be too distracted, but I got a nice 14 teamer with a bunch of buddies that I grew up with. So that's always it's been a league for 5, 6, 7 years now. So that's a fun draft. A little bit bigger, so it's a little different, right? Because you got 14 teams versus your normal 10 to 12 team league. And then I think what we're going to do is in 2 weeks, the Wednesday before the first night, is draft our ADP league. So if you are interested in the ADP league, if you were in it last year, you can be in it again. And if you are interested, let us know. Hit us up in the Discord, which you can find the link in the episode description for that. Everyone else, we got a couple more people joining the draft. So as we get started, we're going to talk NFL news, of course. Nice. We'll definitely then get into the mock draft, talk about our picks as we go. But we want to make sure that we kind of hit some of this news, let people trickle in. We'll start the draft here in about 10 minutes or so. So those of you who are joining us now and jumping into that draft, I did put the link in the comments. So go ahead and join. We've got 4 or 5 slots available still. So let's jump into the news, Josh. I'll kind of let you get started. You got the spicy stuff that you want to talk about today. Let's hear
it. First of all, I'm angry at Tua Tagovailoa. He called out my defensive coordinator. I just caught that. He kind of shrugged it off in the presser. Flores did, but I guess someone was asking Tua about what it was like to play for B-Flow, and it was as the head coach in Miami, and I guess it was a lot of, oh, you're terrible, you're never going to be good enough in this league, just like cutting him down all the time. And I'm like, what? Not my DC, not my defensive coordinator. But who knows what it's like to play for him. Maybe there's some stuff that hasn't come out yet or whatever, but obviously he's pretty hardcore. So I figured I have to call that out. Because
was Flores the one who got fired after like a bad season and then kind of went to the NFL and was like, this is shady?
Yeah.
Was that Flores?
Yeah.
So sucks that he did that. Now, 2, 3, 4 years later, Tua was like, actually, he just was a terrible coach.
Right. He was calling out Stephen Ross, the ownership in Miami, and like about their interviewing practices and things like that. And, some people still think it's part of the reason why he's not a head coach again or hasn't gotten another opportunity, because his defenses are still, near top of the league. So he's definitely got the pedigree to get another shot at some point, you would think. So I don't know. A lot of stuff I don't know, but I can't believe Tua would do that. So that's just a big bummer.
Here in Kansas City, there was always the Eric Bieniemy stuff. Always kind of believed he should be a head coach. And then, then it kind of came out that he was pretty hard on the players, and he kind of kept people in line and kind of rubbed some players the wrong way, and that didn't really help him. So then he goes off to Washington.
Yep.
I think he might be floating around Kansas City still today, but the head coaching thing is not easy to get into. So these guys who actually have a chance have to take advantage of it. But he's not the only coach that has joined the news this week.
No,
tell us a little bit about the old Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick, he has to get his name out there. I don't know. It also was from like the Daily Mail, so it could have been definitely a little bit of a, headline sensationalism type of deal. But I wrote that he's already out of touch because they're saying that he was saying that the Steelers should stick with Russell Wilson, that he put it all on the offensive line, their poor performance, and that you got to go with the tried and true veteran. And I'm like, this is just the oldest guy takes on all of this. Like Justin Fields is legit. And I think that Steelers offensive line has a ton of talent. They drafted it really well this past offseason. I think that they will have I think they'll get some kinks worked out going into the season. I think Russell Wilson might just hold them back. He's still probably the front runner to get the start, but I mean, he's nothing exciting anymore, and I can't imagine that, and while Fields has struggled, sure, he also still has potential. So I think that would be a more interesting take. But so I wrote that in, so I was like, I disagree with, one of the best coaches of all time. I was like, of course he wants to, to go with the older guy, the proven guy, but it's preseason, right? Like a couple of years ago, we saw Kenny Pickett look great in the preseason, and then
the Steelers offense, right?
They were clicking on all cylinders, and then we saw what happened when the game started to matter. So
yep.
If I'm a Steelers fan, I'm probably actually more happy that they're struggling now as opposed to when the season starts. So yeah, a couple of coaches in the news on my end for now.
What is their bye week 9 Steelers?
Oh, that's a good question.
Looks like week 9.
Week
is
9
their bye week. So if they go Russ for 8 weeks or not 8 weeks, that would be very surprising to me. Right. I think Fields gets in there way sooner than that. We will be. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying my thoughts exactly. Like I think while I think Russell Wilson will get the start, I think he's going to be on a real short. Like you start really bringing us down, it's going to be over.
Absolutely. We will start mock drafting here in about 5 minutes. So if you're in the draft, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining in the chat. Share your thoughts as we draft. You can share your thoughts about our draft picks, your own draft picks. We got a resident Chicago Bears fan no longer cares about Justin Fields because he is a Caleb Williams stan at this point in time. Nate in the chat throwing out the random Caleb, not random for us because we know Nate's a Bears fan, but if you don't know, he is a Bears fan, Caleb Williams in the first. We are preparing for some fantasy football. Thanks for joining us here, Poland Spring. Looking forward to it. If you haven't jumped in the draft, please do. Got a couple of spots left. Drew's in the chat with us tonight. Thanks, Drew, for being here. See what happens out of the 6th spot. Giving it a shot. It's weird. I picked the 4 spot. We're going to talk about that here in a moment, why I picked the 4 spot, because I myself need to kind of like understand what I want to do from that spot. Yep. The 6th spot, to me, actually, I don't really like it. The 7th spot, because through the first 6, I know there's 3 wide receivers that'll still be there.
Yep.
But once you get to 7, if the first 6 go off the board and Bijan and Breece Hall are still sitting there at 7, then I'm like, am I going to take one of these running backs or somebody else? So we'll see what Drew does today.
Yeah. I used to really hate getting like in the 5, 6, 7 spot as well. But I think that, there's a significant drop off after number 1 and 2, in my opinion, but in that 5, 6, 7 range, I think there's a lot of similar talent. I think you're right about the receiver cutoffs, a little bit wonky there, but I think the 6th spot could be a nice spot. So yeah, I'm excited to see what roster Drew compiles out of that.
And it's a toss up at the 6. Like if you love running back, you're perfect, right? Because wanna beat relative most often. One of Bijan or Breece are going to be sitting there, and then you just take the one that you like, right? So, Mike already talking crap on one of our league mates. You'll learn all about Dallas if you follow us all season long, because he trades. He sends the most bizarre trades, and I love talking about him on the show. So, Mike throwing shade already about trying to trade in a draft pick. Dallas is, in fact, not in this one. So there we are there. Shane, welcome to the show. Please, you can comment whatever you want, man. You're already here. You might as well throw your takes in the comments there. I'll get back to some news. Gardner Minshew named starting quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep.
My quick fantasy take on this is I think that Gardner's probably better than Aiden O'Connell for guys like Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams. I have pretty well faded Devontae most of the season, draft season, especially in best ball. I will probably fade him in redraft as well, but I do think Gardner helps him. We saw what Gardner did last year in Indianapolis. Michael Pittman was still a viable receiver. Aiden O'Connell is kind of I I don't see it. I don't think he's really a very good quarterback. I don't think either one of them a good quarterback.
Right.
But I think Gardner is a little better for your fantasy production in terms of Brock Bowers and Devontae Adams. Another quarterback's name starter this week was Bo Nix, named actually just this morning, finally announced he will be the starter in week 1 in Denver. I'm super excited about this one, not because he's in Denver, obviously as a Chiefs fan, but from a fantasy football perspective, I've drafted a lot of Bo Nix really late. His best ball, expecting him to kind of be like that late season potential bloomer. So for him to be starting week 1, him, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, all named rookie starters already. Drake May is competing for a week 1 spot. So we could potentially see 4 rookies drafted very high as week 1 starters. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Bo Nix for me is he wasn't one of my favorite quarterbacks coming out of the draft. And I've been really fading the entire Broncos offense, but I think I've been over fading. And I think that especially if he's a late QB2 in your or a late QB2 for your super flex league, or just in best ball, or just to have a chance, I think he will have some decent weeks. I think maybe their offense will be better than I initially thought. I think he'll at least be able to put up some numbers.
Yeah, I hope so. For my best ball bags, I sure hope so. Josh, before I have you talk about a couple injuries here, I got to address this because I agree. Kevin tells Poland Spring, I am the expert. Josh is new to ADP. He's not new to fantasy football, though. He's not new to bite-sized sports or football in general. He's the football coach. He's the expert, right? In the football. We know ball around here. We touch grass. We know how to. I'm a flag football coach, my 9-year-old. So we know football around here. Keebler doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just a beloved Giants fan who's living in a dream. Let's be honest. Go check out his video on our Bite Size Sports YouTube page, because he is living a dream.
I have a lot of Viking fan delusions too that creep into some of my more level-headed analysis. So
it just happens sometimes. I've actually been the opposite of the Chiefs the last couple of years. Famously, not really famously, but famously among my Chiefs people, I really dogged on the Chiefs 2 years ago. The start they had, I was just like, this team is just absolute garbage. I can't believe we're putting this kind of product on the field. What is going on? And they won a Super Bowl. So silly me. Maybe I don't actually know ball. Josh, talk about a couple of injuries here for us.
Yeah, so Stafford's got some hamstring issue going on out in LA, and right now it sounds like McVay's already just ready to say, well, he'll be ready for week 1. They're kind of casting it off as the whole well, he's a vet. He just came out of training camp. It's normal to need a few days off here and there and things like that. So it sounds like they're going to be really cautious with him, as they should. He's an injury-prone quarterback in his late 30s. But at the moment, he should be in there for week 1 where he gets to play against Detroit again. And I think it's optimistic. But from a fantasy standpoint, unfortunately, that's what you have to deal with Stafford. If you have him in any sort of league, he's been injury prone. When we know that he's still an elite arm, an elite talent when he's healthy. And the Rams surprised last year. I think they could be just as good this year with a high-powered offense. But if he gets hurt, that's a risky run. So from a fantasy standpoint, something to keep an eye on. But for now, it doesn't look like, it's not like he's being drafted very highly anyway. So obviously you can wait and grab him late if you want, and it's not going to really affect you because he should, as it stands now, he'll be in there for week 1. And then the other guy, mentioned him last week, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the early running backs coming off. He's going to be practicing next week, according to reports coming out of Detroit. So whatever hamstring issue he was dealing with, they're getting him back to practice next week. And it doesn't look like it's going to be anything that's lingering, at least for now. So if you've been high on Jahmyr Gibbs all offseason, if you think he's going to get more touches in Detroit, at the moment, it's a full go. So don't be afraid of him.
Yeah, happy that we're going to see him back in practice next week. That'll make me feel a little better.
Yeah.
For Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's electric. and a lot of fun to watch on the football field. Last chance, 2 spots left. We are going to go ahead and get this thing started. I told everybody 8:30. It is 8:34, so we are only a couple minutes behind. Not too bad. Again, thank you all. If you hit that like button for us, comment while we're drafting. I'm going to just give a quick rundown of the draft. And then right before I hit start, just kind of hear from you, Josh, on what your plan might be here. Okay. This draft, we're going to do 10 rounds, right? We're not going to go the full 16 rounds, draft a kicker, draft a defense, those kind of things. We're just going to do 10 rounds. At least Josh and I will make sure that we are drafting a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end, okay? So we'll kind of put a starting lineup together as we draft. We get 10 rounds to draft a quarterback. So that's long enough if we want to wait. Even if we end up drafting a guy that maybe you could draft in like the 13th round and we'll talk about that, right? Yeah. Hey, I'm going to wait longer in my regular league, but for this format, we'll go. So we'll just go 10 rounds because we are on a podcast. We do have to, get back to our kids or make sure they're in bed at some point tonight. So we want to make sure that we are doing that. Yep. It is PPR, Chase, of course. Here on ADP, we normally talk about full PPR, 12-team redraft leagues is most of the stuff that we talk about. We'll definitely dabble in other stuff. But for tonight, just a quick 10-round, 1 quarterback, 2 wide receiver league with a tight end and a couple flex positions that you can put anybody in, and it is full PPR. So, Josh, with that, as I hit the start button and pull this draft up, what's your strategy heading into a draft out of the 108 spot?
Yeah, so I chose the 8 spot because that's kind of giving a lot away, but I kind of want to go wide receiver. That's kind of the thought I'm looking at. I'm not going to guarantee that I'm taking wide receiver for those of you that are also participating. But I knew that if I was in the top 5 or 6, I'd be really tempted to take one of the top running backs. And by all means, if one falls to me, I'm going to pivot off of that, right? Because while I'll have a game plan in mind, you have to always be ready to go with the flow. And if somebody falls that you don't expect to fall, you kind of got to run with it. But I'm hearing more and learning more and more, especially as there's not really any workhorse backs, or not nearly as many workhorse backs that were in the past. Like the elite receivers, the top receivers are typically more safe fantasy in terms of producers. So that's kind of I was looking at. Kind of curious to see if I'm picking the second round comes around. So I'll stop. We got some picks already. Let's go.
Oh yeah, we are off and running. I'm trying to make this a little larger. Can I get all 12 teams in right there? I think I can. So hopefully you all can see that on the other side pretty well there. We will definitely service the – oh, shit, I'm up. We'll definitely service the audio listeners as we go as well. I'm trying to get everything going, and I'm like, I didn't even realize I was up. So to start, Christian McCaffrey, obviously Nate goes C-Mac at 101, not surprising. Jefferson to the team 2 was a little surprised. CeeDee Lamb going 3. I thought – I'm obviously taking Tyreek here. I thought I was going to have to choose between Jefferson and Chase. So to get a Tyreek or a CeeDee Lamb to fall to me at 4 is something I'm going to smash every time. For me, I was going to take Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase right now. The only reason that I would not take Jefferson is Sam Darnold, right? Like, I don't know how great I feel about Sam Darnold, but he's a serviceable quarterback. He can obviously throw the ball good enough to where he can hit Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson is going to demand the volume. So I came on here prepared a little bit to talk about Justin Jefferson over Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has the contract situation going on. Not that I'm scared of that, but it gives me one more reason why I'm going to take Jefferson over Chase in that situation. But for today, I get Tyreek Hill. So I'm not going to be mad about that. Obviously, the NFL thinks he's the number 1 player in the National Football League. I think he's one of the better wide receivers, even at his age. He's still super fast on a very great offense.
Yep, and I'm already going to go back on what I said. Like I said, I wasn't going to for sure go wide receiver, and here's Breece Hall falling to me at 8. kind of rounding out this top 8 players that are pretty, expert consensus, everywhere, right? Like these 3 running backs with a combination of those 5 receivers is pretty typical what you see for the top 8. And so I'm happy to get Breece Hall there, even though again my plan was wide receiver, but I can't pass up Breece there. So
yeah, and the reason you don't get a wide receiver there is Lee takes Bijan at the 105. That's a pretty standard pick. Drew takes Amon-Ra St. Brown at 106. That's the guy I thought probably was going to be there at 108. He chose to go wide receiver. Yep. Chase takes Jamar Chase at 107, which is absolutely just that's ridiculous. I just talked about Jefferson over Chase, but for Chase to kind of fall a couple more spots back to the 107, you're going to love that coming in, which leaves you Breece Hall. Then Team 9 takes Garrett Wilson. Anything off the board so far just absolutely surprise you?
No, like I said, this is pretty chalk. If you look at Fantasy Pros ADP, if they look at all the sites, there's some personal preference differences between some of the expert and analysts, but these are all pretty pretty straightforward picks for the most part, except that one.
Poland Spring, I know you're in the chat. I appreciate you throwing a curveball with us. Drafted old Grandy out of Cincinnati, probably 4th tight end on the depth chart. So that's a lot of fun and not something I would ever recommend, right? Raw Dog takes Saquon Barkley. It looks like Raw Dog joined the draft, didn't quite make it to the draft.
Okay.
Auto pick Saquon Barkley. Team 11 takes AJ Brown. Nothing wrong with that first round outside of the 112.
Yeah.
Probably that 112 is probably going to, in your home draft's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Marvin Harrison, one of those guys probably.
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate right now regarding Saquon Barkley and whether or not he's worthy of that. But I mean, from a talent standpoint and from moving to a proven high-powered offense, like you can't argue with it. So
Jonathan Taylor goes to 2, Gibbs at 203, Kyron Williams at 204. So had a little bit of a run with running back. Josh brings you back up. Where are you going to go this time?
See, now this is tough because conventional wisdom, I'm going to bet on the talent again. I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison. There's just, I don't like it's hard because he's a rookie. I get that. Like you can't guarantee he's going to be great, but I'm high on Kyler Murray this year. I'm high on the Arizona offense being at least productive and competitive. And so Marvin Harrison's going to have to be the focal point if they do that. So I'm all in, I guess.
That's right. I love the Cardinals this year. Talked about Kyler last week. You can check that video out on our YouTube page. I just think this offense is not undervalued in a sense. Like, I mean, if you take Marvin Harrison at the turn, that's where he goes in best ball. I know it's a lot different, but if you take him above some of these running backs who just went, I would not be surprised or upset. I think that would be a fair play. If you are a wide receiver guy, I would have probably taken him above. Like if I'm team 11, I'm probably taking AJ Brown and then Marvin Harrison.
Okay.
Probably where I would go. So I like
Josh
that
Allen goes.
Josh Allen goes to Lee at 208 after Derrick Henry and Travis Etienne. So the second round, very wide running back heavy, which I'm going to love because that's going to allow a guy in Puka Nacua to drop all the way down to 209. His ADP right now is 17 on Sleeper. What's that? Like 205, 204 range.
Yeah.
So he's going to fall a couple spots back here. I've got Puka, Devontae Adams, Drake London per ADP right here. Kelsey Olave. I'm out on Devontae Adams. I just don't believe in that offense. Drake London's not bad, but Puka Nacua, so long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy, as you kind of talked about a little earlier, I'm going to really like what I think I'm going to like what I'm going to get out of Puka Nacua. There was a little bit of stuff about Cooper Kupp becoming, he's still the alpha and this and that.
Right.
Look, Cooper Kupp's 31. Puka's like 24, 23. Like this is, I think this is the guy, and I think he's the guy moving forward. So
Yeah.
I get a Tyreek Hill, Puka Nakua start.
Nice.
Chase says, I know I'm reaching on Henry, but he's about to do something special this year. What do you think about that, Josh?
Yeah, I think I've been afraid of him for his age and for going to a team that has a rushing quarterback and things like that. But if Derrick Henry's done anything in his career, it's proved that he's not a normal human compared to other human running backs. And so putting him with that offensive line on a contending team with a game script that would suggest that they want to be on the field with their offense running more than they need than passing, like he should be a great fantasy running back. He scores touchdowns. He's still a beast when he runs. Like if you're in on Derrick Henry, I'm not going to argue too much with you. I personally, not trying to go for him too much, but I can definitely see the appeal there. And I think reaching is an interesting topic as well, Chase. Like when you're drafting, you also have to factor in how many picks you have to wait for your next one. And if you can't get a guy, but you're really dead set on a guy, you do have to reach a little bit. And there's no problem with that. If you want to get your guys, right? If you have guys that you think are going to be better than average or better than, or help you win your league, you go for it. So I'm on board with that. Who else do we see go off the board? I think Pacheco at the 3-1 is really great value. I don't know Chiefs guy over there, but I feel like Pacheco is going to have a pretty beastly season as well. And you said that's Nate in the 101, right?
Nate's at 101. Yeah, he's a Chicago guy.
And Pacheco, you're set at running back, my man.
Yeah.
Holy buckets.
And he gets his Bears and DJ Moore.
Oh, there you go.
I struggled a little bit there. I was hoping Chris Olave would fall to me. Herbie from the Lou, my guy Mike, he was in the chat earlier, takes Chris Olave. So I kind of stretched and reached a little bit as well as I know you're coming up on the clock, but real quick, I'm not high on tight end this early. I love Travis Kelce, obviously, but I'm never taking him this early. I'm not taking Sam Laporta this early. Brandon Ayuk, and I'm not. So I would have taken Devon Achane in most drafts. However, I already had Tyreek Hill, and I don't really want to match up my Miami guys in that sense. And so I just passed on Devon Achane this time. Again, most often out of the 4 hole, if I'm taking Justin Jefferson, I'm taking Devon Achane in round 3, right? But since I had Tyreek Hill, I'm going to take I'm going to pass on Devon Achane. I end up taking Deebo Samuel. I think I love Deebo. Again, Waddle's okay there, but I love Deebo there. I like him over Brandon Ayuk. I've always been a Deebo guy, and so give me a little Deebo Samuel.
Nice. Oh, boy. This is me in all of my drafts. It's what in the world? All right, I'm going to throw a wild card there. You guys can rake me over the coals if you want.
From starting with 2 wide receivers, you actually are going to start 2 running backs and 1 wide receiver. What's going on, Josh?
I know. I lost it. I got nervous, and I love Brandon Ayuk. I think he's open all the time. The trade rumors of him to Pittsburgh scare me. I'm not super excited. And I was hoping, let's see. Oh, we had Mahomes go. Okay, there we go. Jalen Hurts made it to the 310. Very nice. All right, so I already don't like what I've been doing, so I'm not really.
That's why we mock draft, right?
That's exactly right.
Talk about why did you go James Cook and then Trey McBride, and what happened on the turn that maybe kind of messed you up a little bit?
Yeah, so we talk about I talked last week about knowing your league, and everything I've been reading and studying and listening to has James Cook going right around where I took him. I know I took him a little bit early. I just saw an opportunity to grab him there, kind of like you were saying about Laporta. I didn't want to take a tight end yet, but I knew in the back of my mind I wanted to take Trey McBride anyway, so I was hoping that McBride would fall, which he did. And I think James Cook has a chance in this offense that doesn't necessarily have an established wide receiver one anymore to really get a lot of action out of the backfield. I think he's going to get a lot of touches. And so now, maybe I just was, feeling envious of the other teams that were getting their starting backfields. But I think James Cook is going to be really good. But now that I look at it, I'm already second guessing myself because my one receiver out of my first 4 picks is a rookie. And so I really am, putting a lot in the Marvin Harrison basket. But getting McBride was one of my goals as well. I didn't say that out loud at the beginning, and I'm glad I got him where I did. And he's my favorite tight end, even out of Laporta and Kelsey. And so I'm glad I got him there. But I don't know. That's kind of the thought process. But indecision, when you draft with people you don't normally draft with, and like you said, this is why we mock, right? You got to see what guys you're willing to go out on a limb for, and what guys you're like, oh, I guess I don't like that guy that much. So,
yeah, I like James Cook a lot this year. I think that he has RB1 upside. Like I think he can be an RB1, and you're getting him in the back end of the 3rd round here. I do think though, since you've already taken Breece Hall, who also has RB1 upside, and that's why you're drafting him at 108.
right.
For me, I probably take either Ayuk or Evans in that situation. Especially if you want McBride, right? If you're like, I want McBride in the 4th round. But again, we're mock drafting. I am on the clock, but I want to just run down real quick for everyone. After I took Debo, Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle went off the board. It was pretty standard. That's where they belong. Devon Achane actually falls to 307 to Chase. You take James Cook, Ayuk, Hurts, Jacobs, Kupp, and Evans at the 3-4 turn. 2 guys who fell a long ways.
Mm-hmm.
Laporta, Neighbors. Patrick Mahomes goes as the 4th quarterback, really the 3rd quarterback off the board, let's be honest. And then you take Trey McBride. I'll talk about my Mark Andrews pick in the 4th round here shortly after I pick. I am on the clock. I was hoping Lamar Jackson might fall back to me. He does not. I don't love Kenneth Walker in this situation. So I'm going to go ahead and take a guy who I think has great upside in Tank Dell.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be done at wide receiver at this point.
Yep.
Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, Debo Samuel, and Tank Dell as my wide receivers. I feel really good about that. 2 wide receiver league, a flex or 2. So I'm filling in 3 spots in a PPR league every single week with guys who have huge upsides. And also I took Mark Andrews in the 4th round, who, it's Mark Andrews. Like if he's healthy, he can be tight end 1 every single year if he's healthy. That's obviously the problem. But my plan here was to take Mark Andrews and hope that Lamar Jackson fell back to me. Mm-hmm. I love getting 3 wide receivers and then stacking Lamar and Mark Andrews and then figuring out running back later. Like that's a fun little redraft start. So I like that a little bit. It just didn't work out for me this time.
Yeah, that would have been a nice 0 RB start for sure. And I like, your first 3 wide receivers are proven studs at receiver. So I think going with Dell with the upside, you're set at flex and wide receiver for sure. Yeah, and Mark Andrews, he just needs to stay healthy. We just see Anthony Richardson go. I have big hopes for him this year.
Absolutely.
And I'm kind of glad he went, because I would have been tempted to again avoid receiver, but I'm actually going to take T. Higgins at this spot.
It's good, yeah.
Because
I feel like that helps you quite a bit, right?
Yeah,
I know he's
back into the wide receiver
too,
group,
but I looked at Anthony Richardson. I like Anthony Richardson a lot, and I think that if I'm in this, I think Drew did. God, dare I say? Close your ears, Drew. I love what Drew has started here. Look, Drew's a Broncos fan. He married my sister. Like the guy, I don't understand him. Like weird dude, right? Great draft. I love this draft from him. He's gone Amon-Ra St. Brown out of the 106, Travis Etienne in the 2nd round, followed up with Jalen Waddle, which is one of my favorite 2nd round picks. DK Metcalf was huge in the 4th round. and then Anthony Richardson in the fifth. Like I really like what he's doing out of the 6 hole right now.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I think that Anthony Richardson's got QB5 potential all over him this year. So I think that's a great. He didn't wait too long for quarterback, but I think that fits nicely.
Yeah, that really worked out really nicely. As the turn goes, let's check out a couple of the other. Well, let's hear from you. Actually, you're on the clock here. After Walker, Pitts, Swift, Jones, Montgomery, Burrow, Allen, and Kincaid. So some quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends go off the board. Who are you going with?
I'm going with a guy that's rapidly climbing ADP in something at a position I still desperately need. I'm going to grab your guy, Rice.
Come on!
Oh yeah, making me feel better about my Rush James Cook pick because now I do have 3 receivers.
How does he fall to the 6 still? What are we doing, people? Man.
Yeah, I feel really good about that now.
I gotta be honest. I dead serious. I think the ADP is helping there because I should have taken him in the 5th instead of Tank Dell. I mean, I like Tank Dell, but I mean, he's Rashee freaking Rice. He's a wide receiver one on the Chiefs, and he's not going to be suspended.
Right.
What am I doing?
Your reverse psychology. It's your team, right? You don't.
Yeah, that's true.
If you had picked Rashee Rice, you would not have had a good year because it's been for your team. So now he's going to have a good year.
Also, let's be honest. There's no way Rashee Rice makes it to the 5th round in any home redrafts I'm going to be in because they're all Chiefs heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
A couple of weeks we have a in-person Chiefs draft that my 9-year-old also, our Chiefs fantasy draft, my 9-year-old also joins. Guarantee he takes Patrick Mahomes round 1 and Rashee Rice round 2. So this is actually me just knowing I don't actually have a chance to take Rashee Rice.
Fair enough.
I talk good about Drew, and then he leaves us in auto drafts. Probably putting the kids to bed. Josh, as I take a peek at who's available here, let's answer Erm's question. Erm says, I have pick 4 in my draft. This is my first year, and people have been saying just take who you like. Yeah, take who you like. I'm thinking Mark Andrews. His dad was friends with my uncle, and he's pretty solid. Yes, he's solid. Great dude. Great tight end. Maybe not pick 4.
Not pick 4. No. You can take him I would say you can take him. If you're worried you're not going to get him, you can take him in the 3rd round. I would say if you're desperate for Mark Andrews, you can reach in the 3rd. He went near the end of the 4th round in the mock we're doing right now. So, but the core of what you're saying is true, right? You want to go with the guys you like because, we all think we know a lot about fantasy football, but there's a lot of variability there. So, and speaking of tight ends, I know we don't have anyone in that slot, but Dalton Kincaid at the 6.4, I thought was a nice pick for that team. Obviously it was an auto pick, but I'm pretty high on Kincaid this year.
Yeah, after you take Rashee Rice here, Amari Cooper goes, James Conner goes to Drew. Lee takes Evan Ingram, tight end of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I take my first running back here, Ramondre Stevenson. I hope Drake May is the starting quarterback. I think Ramondre has got that. I mean, I like Antonio Gibson as a player, but he hasn't necessarily ever taken snaps from other guys. And so I think Ramondre is going to get fed early and often, and especially with the rookie tight end. So being my first running back in the 6th round, I didn't hate that pick.
No, I think from a 0 RB standpoint, Stevenson is not going to get you the flashy, the gaudy numbers all the time, but his floor should be really solid, which is what you want because you have your elite production at the wideout position, and then right after we saw Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb stack, which I really like from Herbie. I think that was a nice play there. Oh, and the Ferguson stack. Okay,
I'll say, and now he adds Ferguson. So right now I'm debating. I could go another running back, right? Get my RB2 going on. I actually like quite a bit of running backs here. I could roll down this running back list, and Tony Pollard, I don't mind. I would also not be mad about Tajay Spears. Devin Singletary is going to be the one in New York. Zach Moss and Chase Brown in Cincinnati. Yep. There's a lot of running backs on the board right here. But there is one quarterback.
I know who it is.
That you all know that I'm absolutely in love with this year. I'm going to take him in the 7th round. And he is going to be minus Malik Cunningham. The 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th quarterback off the board. I'm taking Kyler Murray in the 7th round as the 9th quarterback off the board. We're in redraft, so I don't care about any kind of stacking or anything like that. Yeah, if you can stack it, I like it, right? You want to put some value or some, I guess, money into a one offense. I don't mind it, but I don't need it. Give me Kyler Murray, all those rushing stats, all that upside. I might have just drafted a top three quarterback in the 7th round as the QB9.
Very nice. Yeah, I like that for you a lot. I also like the Adunze pick right after. And now here I am, who I cannot take Kyler Murray. I just learned that Kyler Murray
would have been nice. You can take Jordan Love, or you don't love him.
I do not like Jordan Love. I am going to stick with. Ooh. Yeah, this is tempting. I'm gonna go with more of the proven floor. I'm gonna take McLaurin. It's pretty chalk, but I've been hearing a lot of good things about Jaden Daniels coming out. He looks mature. He looks like he's making all the right throws. Sorry, I'm confused. Thrown off by the picks over there. So, and now I'm back on the board, and I still have a lot of openings here. I wonder if.
I'm gonna answer the troll question here. Justin, I'll give you your 2 minutes of fame. Do you think Khalil Shakir would be a good first round wide receiver pick? Every time I bet his under last year, he would hit his over. I just feel like he's his come out year. Khalil Shakir, I will actually talk about him. Obviously, he's not a good first round pick. You know that, Justin, as I do as well. Curtis Samuel got hurt just yesterday, I believe it was. And so not great for the Bills, not great for Curtis Samuel. He's been hurt quite often. And so Shakir kind of moves up a little bit in my ranks, something I would look forward to, because for me, I don't really believe in Keon Coleman right now. And Curtis Samuel's hurt. You got Dalton Kincaid, James Cook, and who else? It's got to be Shakir. So, no, definitely don't take him in the first round. Love that you're here, Justin. Appreciate it. And I also don't mind you throwing out a kind of a random name so we can talk about Khalil Shakir. But, no, don't take him in the first round. Tajay Spears won me $500 last season. Let's go. Let's go. What's up, James? Happy you're here. You're here just in time to watch me maybe take one of your favorite running backs.
Didn't Ridley go? Ridley went.
Calvin Ridley went, yep. And from Tennessee. Xavier Worthy goes right before to Lee in the 5 hole. I'm going to go. I love a lot of these running backs here. I'm going to take Javonte for now. So I love all these running backs. Javonte I like, Zach Moss I like, Jaylen Warren I love, but he just got hurt, so I didn't want to take him as my RB2. I need a little early season production. Jaylen Warren might miss a game or two. I like Tajay Spears. I like Brian Robinson. And then Chase Brown. So these guys are all guys that I'm completely happy with. I feel really good about what I've done here, because I love my 4 wide receivers, and I know I can get something out of these running backs in this range.
Yeah. James, if it makes you feel any better, I do have Ridley in another one of my leagues. So I do think Tajay Spears could win someone else $500 this year, depending on how you bet with him. I think he has a chance to do some things for sure. So there's some love for Titans.
I'm probably about to take Tajay Spears, I think. Let's see who else is on the board. Brock
Caleb
Bauer
Williams
still on the
goes
board.
to start the 9th round. Nate got his Caleb Williams. There you go.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about some of these teams here. So Devin Singletary, Nick Chubb, and Zach Moss as running backs all go. Deontay Johnson has great upside. Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think what I'm actually going to do is save my wide receiver spot, and I'm going to go another running back here because there's quite a bit I like, and I think we're about to see a big run of them. So now it's just me picking my absolute favorite one of all of them. And for me, this is a home run type of pick. Jonathan Brooks coming off the pup might be bad, might not be bad, but I'm going to scroll down here and go Chase Brown. Getting a lot of camp buzz.
Yep.
Great positive camp buzz there in Cincinnati. I think Zach Moss, while has been a serviceable NFL running back, I mean, he doesn't really, he's had decent fantasy production in terms of a couple touchdowns, here and there. But I think Chase Brown and the explosiveness that we saw out of him last year in the limited time that we saw him, I think that starts to elevate his game. And I really like Chase Brown. And now he's my third running back. So I don't even have to start him the first couple weeks, right? I can sit on him, see if he progresses because I believe in Ramondre and Javonte in front of him on this team.
Yep. Chase Brown's getting a lot of hype. And, people are pointing out that Zach Moss has done really good as a spot starter, but as a RB1, they're definitely going to share a lot of time. And Chase Brown is definitely the more explosive one, so I like that pick as well. I'm on the clock, and I really want to kind of get back into the RB game, but I don't want to reach on a guy or two that I'm looking ahead at right now. So I'm going to go with the rookie guy that I've been talking about more recently. I'm going to take Brian Thomas, and again, because I went 2 running backs and 1 receiver early, I'm obviously feeling like I need to load up a little bit on receiver to make sure a couple of these guys hit. And then now that's the 10th round, I'm going to go quarterback because, like you mentioned, we were definitely going to take quarterbacks here. I wouldn't necessarily
3 of them go right before you. Any of those that you wanted, Purdy, Love, and Goff all go right after you take Brian Thomas.
I mean, Goff is my favorite. Well, I should say this. I know he's not the flashiest one, but at least he's most consistent. Purdy, I think that's probably the best pick out of the 3, just in terms of what he's done consistently. I've always kind of been down on him, but he's always proved me wrong, so I don't hate that pick at all. I'm going to take a guy who I think has a chance to be a top 5 talent, and I think that last year was a dip in production but I also think he's getting better and more mature as a quarterback. I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence here, and I'm going to hope that the maturity and the production comes back. He missed out on a lot of touchdown passes last year that would have helped boost his stats quite a bit. He wasn't as bad as his numbers would suggest is kind of what I'm trying to get at. And so I still believe in Trevor Lawrence. And, this is round 10. If we were doing the full draft, I could probably wait another round or 2 maybe.
Absolutely.
And so I think for value with Trevor Lawrence there, I think I feel really good about that. So
yeah, and I think that's important to state, right? Like it's not necessarily mean you're going to force it in round 10, but right. Just what we said up front, we'll try to draft all of them. Right. In 10 rounds. James, I agree. This has actually kind of got me a little bit worried, not super worried, but in redraft, if I take one of the 2, I feel like at least for the first 4 to 6 weeks, I might not have much of anything with Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard just because I don't know which one's going to be getting the play that week. So it does make me hesitate a little bit. The reason I'm not worried about that with Chase Brown and Zach Moss is just because I think Chase Brown is blowing Zach Moss out of the water here.
Yeah.
And so I think that, all the drumbeat is about Chase Brown. And so I feel more comfortable with that. In my situation, I take Chase Brown. Brian Robinson, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears all went right after me. All of those guys were in consideration in this situation.
Yep.
And I think all of those guys could be a game changer
Yeah.
in the 9th round for you. It's just a matter of like, do we pick the right one?
Right.
And I'm going to take the guy who's on what I believe is going to be the best offense, the one who has the biggest drumbeat this offseason or this preseason, and the one that's healthy, right? I love Jaylen Warren. He's not healthy right now. Brian Robinson's not bad. He's going to get a lot of run. Is Washington's offense going to be good?
Right.
I don't know. Like, Tajay Spears is splitting with Tony Pollard. They bring Tony Pollard in. It's just so that's why I take Zach Moss or Chase Brown there. And then with my last pick, I take Jameson Williams again, just swinging for the fences right here, right?
Yep.
Guy who also has a lot of camp buzz, a lot of juice around him. It sounds like he's doing awesome, and I don't need him for the first couple weeks. So let me just take a swing and see if I hit. I feel really good about my other positions. Let's go for upside. That's what I'm doing here.
Absolutely.
So let's Josh, overall draft. Any thoughts overall for the draft? And then what I want to do is I want to talk about everybody who joined us tonight. I super appreciate that. Yes. Stay here with us. We're going to talk about each one of your teams. I want to hear from you in the chat. Let us know, how do you feel you did? Mike has already jumped in here and kind of talked a little bit about his team. Let us know how you feel about your team. We'll pull up your comments as we kind of talk through your team. But Josh, overall, maybe even start with your own team. How do you feel this draft went?
Yeah, I felt like it went pretty well. Kind of Mike's comment is applicable here. So I felt like I froze, but that's why we do mock drafts. So we talked about that with my James Cook pick, right? I saw a chance to get him. I knew it was going to be a reach, but I was worried he wasn't going to be back around. And then in that moment, maybe if I had analyzed it going forward, maybe I wouldn't have been so dead set on getting him at that spot. But like you said, if you look at rounds 8 and 9, look at all those running backs that went. Like, it's more and more popular to 0 RB. And so I know I went hero RB with Breece Hall, but then I just saw that opportunity to lock up my running back room. So I was a little uneasy after that, but we talk about getting the guys we like. I got Trey McBride, and then I got a whole slew of receivers who I know can perform well, who I know can produce. It's just going to be a little bit up in the air, how consistent they all are. But I think Rashee Rice is my biggest steal of the draft, and I don't know by the time the season starts, if you have another week for your drafts, I don't think he's making it that far. So this might be the last time you see him at the 6.5. But I feel like I got a bona fide number 1 receiver 2 situation with Marvin Harrison and him. They're more like 1A, 1B, and I think to get him that late was pretty lucky for me there. Obviously, I would, if the draft were to finish up, I'd be going back to the running back room. Trey Benson's still on the board. I know we talked about how he kind of he looked
better in week 2.
Sputtering start, but he was one of my favorite prospects, right up there with Jonathan Brooks. So I like the idea of taking him as a late round flyer and things like that. So I felt like it went well. But yeah, just to kind of go off of Mike's comment, like when we, doing a mock draft, talking about at the same time, like you kind of talk yourself in and out of certain things. So that's why it's good to do them and good to prepare that way. So again, who you really want to go to bat for. And of course, my strategy was thrown out the window in round 1. And maybe that's why I had running back on the mind, because I thought for sure I was taking wide receiver, but so it goes.
We only do a minute. Usually, I mean, standard, at least from all the redrafts I'm in, you got about a minute and a half. Right. Some you might get 2 minutes. So you get a little bit more time, right? We did shorten it because, again, we're on a podcast. We're trying to do a mock draft while also not being here until 11, 12 o'clock at night. So we got plenty of other drafts to do those things with. I'm curious, though, looking back on your team just right now, you take Breece Hall. Is there any regret taking Breece Hall over somebody like a Garrett Wilson?
A little bit. I think in my head I had like a top 8, and so that's why I felt confident going with Breece Hall there. I don't think you wouldn't get any argument for me if you had my spot and you went Garrett Wilson, though, because I think that he has he has a potential, and even AJ Brown for that matter. So if you're in the 8-9 spot, you don't want to take a running back, even if Breece Hall's there. Garrett Wilson, AJ Brown, easily top 10 picks, or easily justifiable top 10 picks as well. Because I did think about both of those guys, and then I just ended up going with Breece Hall just because the usage is there, and I don't see him get to 108 very often when I see mocks and things like that. So I think this is an opportunity. That I got excited about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that you said you're kind of top 8, right? So most of your big time fantasy people these days are going to talk about tier based drafting. And so that to me kind of sounds like exactly what you did in your own mind, right? You have a top 8, and Breece Hall is in that tier of the top 8, and Garrett Wilson is not. He's in the next tier down. So you just take the last guy that's left in your tier and you move on, and then you adjust the rest of the way.
Yep.
Rundown for your audio listeners, just real quick. You got Breece Hall, Breece Hall and James Cook at running back, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Trey McBride at tight end as your onesie positions. And then what I think was a pretty good job of recovering at wide receiver in Marvin Harrison, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice was the big one you talked about. Terry McLaurin in the 7th. I mean, if this Washington offense isn't any good, if Jay Daniels isn't any good, Terry McLaurin in the 7th could look really great. You got the rookies, Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas swinging for that maybe late season upside, maybe mid-season upside there with those guys. I think you did a pretty good job with wide receiver coming back around. Let's go back to Mike's team because he's already kind of mentioned his team. He says not a fan of his tight end pick. He took Ferguson in that spot. He felt like he froze, and that's why we do mock drafts, as you mentioned. Mike goes CeeDee Lamb at the 103, Drake London, Chris Olave. So he starts 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
So you're going to get some love from me if you're going to start 3 wide receivers. Rachaad White, Joe Mixon in the 4-5, Dak Prescott in the 6th, Jake Ferguson in the 7th, Singletary in the 8th, Hopkins in the 9th, Gus Edwards in the 10th. So I think he did really good through the first 3 rounds. Maybe the 4th. I don't know. Maybe Rachaad White would be. Rachaad White is just so inefficient that I don't love picking him.
Right. I was going to say from a volume,
especially when some of these other guys were on the board still.
Yeah, I was just going to say from a volume standpoint, though, in fantasy, that's all we care about. And so, like, to be able to get those 3 wide receivers plus a running back, he's going to get that many touches. I was okay with the Rachaad White pick for sure, even though, it's not, he doesn't excite people as a player necessarily.
I think I probably would have looked at maybe like Zay Flowers or Tank Dell, who I took at that 4-10 spot instead of White. Joe Mixon's okay. When you come back around, though, some of these other running backs later, I just like them so much more that maybe you just take Lamar Jackson there. Maybe you just take a wide receiver and then Anthony Richardson there. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It just Rachaad White and Joe Mixon, I don't think you're getting so much more than, say, two rounds later when Team 2 took Najee Harris right before Jake Ferguson, right? Like, I think you're probably not getting that much more. But then he takes Dak Prescott, which I thought was sharp in the 6th round with CeeDee Lamb. I also agree I don't like the Jake Ferguson. I think it's fine because you have Dallas stacked already. But George Kittle's still on the board. I don't think I can take Cole Kmet nor Jake Ferguson over George Kittle. So that's where I'm at with his. Nate out of the 1 hole. Josh, talk through Nate's team. How do you think he did? Again, he's obviously our Chicago homer, but how do you think Nate did?
Yeah, I think his start was really strong. I mean, I mentioned that DJ Moore, even though I think he's a great wide receiver, I'm a little worried to see how the rookie will distribute the ball. And so while he's a proven wide receiver 1 as your first wide receiver, and here I am talking about proven wide receiver 1s, and I took a guy that hasn't even caught a pass in the NFL.
Except on the field.
My point is, like, I really like Roma Dunze. I know Keenan Allen's still there. They have Cole Kmet, Gerald. Like, there's so many pass catchers in Chicago that if it's just hard for me to see because we haven't seen Caleb Williams in the NFL. It's hard to see if he's going to be able to give one guy the majority of the targets consistently. That's my only fear of DJ Moore, but I don't hate the pick. I mean, he's a proven wide receiver 1. So if you think that's going to work out, I'm on board with that. I really like his Pacheco pick in the 3rd round. I know a lot of the analysts that I follow as well are starting to push him up into the 2nd for sure. And so that 3-1 spot, even though, doesn't look like it's that far off, like he's probably closer to the Etienne Henry, Kyron Williams range that that looks like he got a really good value there then as well. The rest of the team, I think, is pretty decent. I think Keon Coleman is a nice upside pick as well. I think that from what we've been hearing out of, what did Josh Allen say, that he's got the best body control of any receiver he's ever played with, like the basketball player going to go up and get the contested catches. And so from an 8th round pick, I think that's smart, because otherwise I think it's a little thin from a wide receiver standpoint. I had Zay Flowers in redraft last year, and he was pretty decent, pretty solid, but for your 2nd wide receiver, I'm going to be nervous about him putting up consistent numbers. I like him. I think he's good, and I think he will have a good season. But he might trend towards the boomer bust category a little bit. And I like Stroud there. I mean, I personally, if I don't get like one of the first couple of quarterbacks, I'd like to wait. Like when I missed out on Malik Cunningham, I basically decided that I was going to wait. I'm just kidding. But no, my point is, I'm not huge on the mid-round quarterbacks necessarily, but I'm all on the CJ Stroud hype train. So I think my only knock here is a little bit thin at receiver, just because, his first 2 aren't necessarily who I would have done. They're not terrible picks or anything, but I don't know. That's kind of where I stand. And I'm glad he got his Caleb at the end, right before we finished up.
That's what I was going to say. Like, the only thing I don't like about, really, like, actually don't like, well, other than the Cole Kmet pick in the 7th round, I think that was way too early. You could have got him in the 10th round. So Nate, as a Chicago Bears fan, if you're going to, please know you can get Cole Kmet in the 10th round. You don't have to draft him that early. But other than that, if like in this situation, he's a Bears fan. He wants to draft Caleb Williams. Freaking go draft your guy, right? If you want to do that, then don't take CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
Like that's where I'm at, because I agree his wide receivers are thin. You start CMC and Pacheco, 2 of your first 3 picks, with DJ Moore sprinkled in there. Okay. No, I mean, I'm not taking DJ Moore there, but I'm not going to argue with you if you like him. You're a Bears fan. So I'm not taking Stroud. I'm going to take, Steph Diggs, Devontae Smith, Tank Dell, one of these other wide receivers in this spot. And now, if you're staring down CMC, Pacheco at running back with DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, say Steph Diggs, Jaden Reed, now you look great at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And instead, you take CJ Stroud, and then you take Caleb. Like, I just think you kind of already have a plan. I'm going to take Caleb, and I'm going to take him early because I'm a Bears fan. Take him. Love him, right? Don't take Stroud early then. Just pass on Stroud and this one, and then take your wide receiver and bolster that. So that's my only complaint about Nate's draft here. Let's go over to Chase. Chase says, I feel golden. I got sniped at quarterback twice with Kyler and Anthony Richardson. I'm drafting with Chase next Sunday night, so that's good to know. I need to take Kyler a little bit earlier in that draft, I guess, if I'm going to take Kyler, because I know Chase is all over it. He says, but I'm high on Jaden Daniels. Yep. Kittle was solid value. Love my wide receivers. Wish Chubb was there. That is an inside joke for our own fantasy football league. But Kittle was a solid value. I firmly agree with that. Yep. And I agree. I think Jaden Daniels has an opportunity. If you're not going to get, like, if you miss on Anthony Richardson, to me, the next best is Kyler Murray. And if you miss on Kyler Murray, the next best is Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. Probably Jaden Daniels a little bit more, because it's a little bit more of a murky offense,
Right.
probably running for his life a little bit more, right? And then if you miss on Jaden Daniels, there's Caleb Williams. Those are the type of the quarterbacks that I like, the running quarterbacks anyways. So I agree with his take here that Jaden Daniels is a good pick here. Real quick, I'll say the team he drafted, and I want to get your thoughts. Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, and Jaylen Warren at running back. Aforementioned Jaden Daniels at quarterback and George Kittle at tight end. I think it goes Jamar Chase out of the 7 hole, Michael Pittman in the 4th round, George Pickens, Amari Cooper, and Christian Watson, all at wide receiver. How do you feel about Chase's draft?
Yeah, I like it for the most part. I mean, I'm a little worried about Jaylen Warren. I know he got hurt, and I know he's going to be back after a few weeks. And so I think he's missing a little bit something in the running back room. But I mean, that's just the risk you run, kind of. So I'm not upset about that. I think his wide receivers were really solid after going with the big one in the 1st round. I think Pittman, Pickens, and Cooper are all wide receiver 2s at the worst. I think at least in my head right now, I think Pickens has a chance to be great too. Maybe not with Russell Wilson, but we'll have to see. I don't know. It's hard to trust the Steelers offense. But no, I like where he went with it. I like when he got Jaden Daniels, kind of what you mentioned about the quarterbacks. If this draft were continuing, I would suggest that he get Jalen Wright for Miami to kind of handcuff Devon Achane a little bit.
Yep.
Like Miami always uses their running backs. Jeff Wilson's still there. Mostert's still there. I get that. But Achane's been getting all the hype in camp, and Jalen Wright's been turning some heads as well. And so I think, to try to protect a little bit against injury, because you have those 2 studs that should put up, really solid points every week. I know I mentioned I was down on Kittle. I'm not down on Kittle necessarily when we talked about who was a little bit outside of value, but I think here it felt right. And I think I like him better than Njoku, who went around later and stuff. And so I think that was a smart pick there. So I feel pretty good about Chase's team.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely think that the Jaylen Warren pick, I would be interested to know, because the fact what is this? 8 of the previous 11 picks, or 8 including his, so not including his, 7 of the previous 10 picks were all running backs. I do think it is the end of a tier, right? The next running backs, Austin Eckler, Jalen Brooks, Gus Edwards. Maybe you could Maybe you could put Jonathan Brooks up in that tier, but I'm not putting Eckler or Gus Edwards in that tier by any means.
No.
And so I do think Jaylen Warren was the end of a tier here, or at least argument for the end of a tier. So I'd be interested to know if he wanted Warren, or if it was like, well, this is the last guy in the tier,
right?
And I need another running back, and I know by the time we get back around, there's not going to be a running back I like. Right. And that happens in your fantasy drafts, and you have to be prepared for that. Even if he's not the best guy that you like, right? Maybe you really love Brian Robinson, but you just got sniped by, whatever. Like, you got to adjust. And so I don't mind that. I also don't mind Jaylen Warren here because you got Derrick Henry, Devon Achane. So you got your 2 running backs early in the season. So if Warren's not there first week, you're good. You're not starting Jaylen Warren first week anyways. You want to swing for that upside. So, but yeah, Chase does mention here in the chat, didn't want Warren, but he needed something. And I agree.
Yeah.
If you don't take Warren there and you waited till, say, the 10th or 11th round, now your running back 3 is really pushed down tier wise. Yeah. Like, there's really not nobody left, but there's nobody that has early season upside. You mentioned Trey Benson, Jalen Wright. These guys have upside, but it's contingency value. Somebody has to get hurt in front of them, and they have to be great. Whereas Jaylen Warren is going to be on the field as soon as he's healthy. Whether Najee's on the field or not, Jaylen Warren's still going to be. So he has early season upside, not necessarily late season upside. So that's why I think this is the right move for him to take there. He said he did have Brian Robinson sitting in the queue. So, you take the last remaining option, and which I also think that you did the right thing at the 8 hole. Once that's gone, there's not running backs. You only draft 2 running backs here, right?
Right.
But there's not a 3rd running back that you should be taking there.
Right.
Maybe somebody could argue Jonathan Brooks, but he might start the season on the PUP list. you might be sitting 4, 5, 6 weeks without Jonathan Brooks. That's hard to draft this early.
Yep, for sure. I agree. That's where I talked myself out of reaching on Trey Benson for that exact reason. Like it was just too early. That was too big of a tier drop off. I couldn't justify it yet. So,
and we know there's round 11, 12, 13 coming up still.
Right.
Did we talk about Drew's team yet? I don't think we have. Drew says,
yeah, we have not talked about Drew's yet.
He froze up on my James Conner pick, was targeting Montgomery and Cooper, and they were both picked right before. So Drew takes real quick. He takes Anthony Richardson in the 5th round at quarterback, as I talked about during the draft. I really liked. He takes ETN, James Conner, Brian Robinson at running back, St. Brown, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, Calvin Ridley, Jackson Smith, and Jigba at wide receiver, and David Njoku. But he says he froze on his James Conner pick. He had David Montgomery and Amari Cooper queued up, and he ends up taking James Conner. And then he also says, don't like my Smith and Jigba, but only because I have Metcalf. Yeah, I mean, I get that. You kind of handcuffed your own wide receiver, though.
Yeah.
So you don't hate that. My thoughts really quick. I think that his first 5 rounds really went phenomenal. I think he played that perfectly. I am not opposed to James Conner. I think this is actually the perfect team to take Trey Benson and say like round 12 or 13.
Yeah,
and off James Conner, knowing he's older and a little bit,
and misses a few games every year, basically.
Right, like he's a little injury prone. You don't want to label somebody like that, but he gets injured, and so you love that. I like Calvin Ridley. I listened to Fantasy Footballers. One of those guys had Calvin Ridley as my guy this year, and I really liked what I heard from him. I think it was, I can't remember, Andy, Mike, and Jason. I don't know which one it was, but the sell that they had, I kind of liked it. Like, it's made me take him in best ball a couple more times. So I like that a little bit. Njoku is nothing to me. Like I'm just not taking that tight end there. But I like Brian Robinson and I like JSN. So yeah. I like this team. Am I off base? I mean,
no.
Feels like a good structured team through 10 rounds outside of the David Njoku pick, which I just would never do myself.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same. It's a very balanced team. There's not a lot to find out or find wrong with it. I'm not a big fan of Njoku either, but it's fine. And like you said about Connor, he gets hurt every year for a few games, but he's also just always really consistent. He finds the end zone, he puts up good numbers, and to pair him with ETN, that's good. And I know I would feel weird about JSN alongside Metcalf as well, but I mean, you have 5 receivers there. It's a 2 wide receiver league, so I think it's okay to have that backup pass catcher for Seattle. JSN still has tons of upside, right? Like he could very well become an elite producer as well as like a young guy with upside. So there's no pick I dislike really either, because I like getting Brian Robinson there. We talked about that's like an end of a tier, and when your RB2 and Connor is an injury prone guy, and ETN, he's even had his moments. Like, I think it's good to go running back there. And if Robinson is who is available, that's totally fine there. So yeah, it feels like a really well-balanced team, which is what you want when you have the upside of Anthony Richardson, right? You could have even if everyone just makes their floor there, you could have Richardson just blowing up the league for sure. So I think Drew did a nice job.
All right, let me give you a 2v2 here. I want to know, which ones would you rather have?
Okay.
Would you rather have Calvin Ridley and David Njoku, or George Kittle and Xavier Worthy?
I'm going to go with Ridley and Njoku.
Okay. Would you rather have Njoku and Brian Robinson, or Javonte Williams and Brock Bowers?
Njoku and Brian Robinson, or Javonte Williams and Brock Bowers? Ooh. I'm going to go with Javonte and Brock Bowers there.
I firmly agree with that one. And that's, I know you can't go back in time, but that's literally what Drew would be looking at right here, right?
Oh, I see.
He takes Njoku, I take Javonte 2 picks later. So now he feels he has to take Brian Robinson, and Brock Bowers goes 4 picks later.
Yeah.
Andrew's a Broncos fan, so he probably should have just taken Javonte there, left Njoku, and then Brock Bowers comes back to him in the 9th round. I think that there's a lot more upside with Javonte. Full year removed from his injury now and back at it. There was early preseason reports about him not making the team. I think that's all fluff and all gone now. I think he will be the starter so long as he's healthy. And Brock Bowers just has massive upside.
Yeah.
Tight end. He was the best pass catcher in Georgia beside, guys like every freaking, I can't even think of all the Georgia. There's like 4 or 5 of them that now play in the NFL. Like there's
Pickens, no. George Pickens from Georgia?
I don't think he was there with Brock Bowers. He may have been when Bowers was real young. But that's the point is I think Brock Bowers has great upside. So that was just a little fun 2v2. I was just curious.
That makes sense.
Where you would fall. Okay, let's talk last one here, and then I'll get to my team. So I guess I haven't talked about my team yet. Is Lee. Lee has been in the chat. He did tell you, he said earlier he liked your Breece Hall over Garrett Wilson pick. He agreed with that. Sorry, Poland, you didn't win tonight, and we're not going to cover your team. But I am so happy that you've been here with us. Appreciate your interactions that you've given us. But let's go with Lee's team here. He takes Brian Robinson out of the 5 hole.
Bijan
Robinson. We just talked about Brian
Robinson.
We
were just talking about Brian, right?
Golly. That would have thrown off anybody that was listening and not watching. Bijan Robinson out of the 5 hole. He also takes Alvin Kamara and Tajay Spears at running back. He has Josh Allen at quarterback at the 208. I'm interested to talk about with you. Nico Collins, Devontae Smith, Roma Dunze, Xavier Worthy, Khalil Shakir at wide receiver. And then he is a closet Jaguars fan. I don't know why he loves the Jags so much, but he loves the Jags, and he takes Evan Ingram at tight end.
Yep.
The one that jumps out to me is what the heck? Love you, Poland Spring. I love you. You have been a fun participant tonight. I appreciate that. Josh Allen at the 208, man. Too early, too late, crazy. How are you feeling? This is the first quarterback off the board. I do agree with that part.
Yep.
Sorry, Malik Cunningham, Poland Spring. But I do agree with Josh Allen being the first quarterback off the board. Right. But I want where do you take Josh Allen? If maybe not where do you take him, but where do you think he should go?
I'm with everything you said. It feels too early to me, but at the same time, he is the first quarterback off the board. This is kind of like, I always go back to know your league, right? Like you might, if it's a league that you've been in for years and you know that people want to make sure they get their quarterback, you might have to take Josh Allen here near the end of round 2. But it does feel way too early for me. And the only reason is because like all the way up through, what is it? I mean, still including Devontae Adams, we have Olave, Deebo Samuel, maybe at Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle. Like if I'm Lee, if I get, instead of Allen there, if I get Puka, London, Moore, Adams, or Olave, and then I take Josh Allen in that 3rd round pick, right at the 3-5, that would be kind of my ideal scenario to still get Josh Allen. But would he still have been there? I don't know. That's the part that's tough, because he is going to be the first quarterback off the board, and he should be, and I totally agree with that. And I think, even though he's lacking a number 1 wide receiver that's proven, I think in some ways that's almost going to unlock Josh Allen. He's not going to feel like he has to feed Stephon Diggs anymore. So he's going to be slinging it all over the place. And I have big aspirations for Josh Allen this year. So I don't necessarily hate that it went that early. It just feels too early to me. I think if you take one of those next few receivers instead, and then maybe take Josh Allen in the 3rd, but again, it's hard to tell if you're playing with a league and you know that those quarterbacks are going to go off pretty soon, even if it's a 1 quarterback league. you might have to get him a little bit earlier. So I don't know if that answers your question even.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's, do I really think Josh Allen is that much different than Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson? And maybe, right? Like we've seen it.
Right.
I have Josh Allen in the 16 team dynasty league. That's the highest buy-in league that I'm in. And Josh Allen has taken me to the championship game and won it a couple years back. Like I love me some Josh Allen in fantasy football. Big fan. He does exactly what I want.
Yep.
But is he that much different than what I'm going to get out of Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson? Or what I could potentially get out of an Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, right? Like that's who I am. I'm going to go after these guys who run the ball anyways.
Right.
And I don't think that he does so much that I have to take him in the second round. I think that you're right to where you take that wide receiver and you push Josh Allen and you see if he falls back to you in the third. And if he falls to you at 305, you're ecstatic.
Yeah.
You're like, heck yes. Josh Allen just fell to me. And if he doesn't, you take Jalen Hurts. And if you don't like Jalen Hurts there, you take Lamar in the fourth. Like, that's why I don't want to do that. I want somebody else either to jump on the second round Josh Allen and take that risk, or allow Josh Allen to come back to me in the early parts of the third round. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That's just the way I think I would be playing it. Nico Collins is now your number one wide receiver, who is great, but with Tank Dell and Steph Diggs, like, plus Dalton Schultz still there.
Yep.
How much is there actually going to be to go around? And then you have Devontae Smith as your second wide receiver, who is the second wide receiver on the Philadelphia Eagles, and maybe like the third or fourth option now behind Jalen Hurts running the ball and Saquon running the ball.
Right.
Right. And so I think you just really handcuffed yourself a little bit in terms of upside with the wide receiver position because you didn't have that. So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think on the flip side, I think he's set at running back. I think Kamara at the 4.8 is, I think he's going to be really productive again this year. I think that's a smart pick. And you said he's a closet Jags fan, right? I love that Evan Ingram pick. I think
he's actually a Giants fan, but I swear every time he's always talking about the Jags. He always talks about Trevor Lawrence.
Nice. They like Evan Ingram, and he has like you're talking about for receiver upside with Odunze and Worthy. That's some really exciting upside, but you would like to pair that with one of the more proven fantasy guys from in that round too. So yeah, that's really my only issue with it.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's like, would I rather have Puka and Josh Allen, Puka and Lamar Jackson, rather than Josh Allen and Nico? Like, just looking at those 2v2s, I think that's what mock drafting allows us to do. It allows us to kind of open that up to be like, okay, well, if I did this again,
right,
would I rather have Josh Allen and Nico Collins, or would I rather go ahead and take Puka there? Maybe Drake London. I don't know, whoever, whoever you like in that situation, and Lamar Jackson in the fourth.
Yep.
So, okay, let me talk about my team real quick. Before I get to that, Poland, Cunningham hype, baby. NMB jumps in here. Full PPR 3 wide receiver super flex. How are you valuing each position and structuring your lineup? Would you trade the second and third round picks for a first and sixth to have 2 firsts and get like Chase and ARSB? And he puts in here, his league doesn't take quarterbacks early, even in super flex. So pretend like ADP is the same. Okay. Because I'm like, yeah, if I can get 2 first round picks in a super flex, I just hammer two quarterbacks.
Right.
And just figure out the rest starting the 4th round. I would be fine with that.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't seem like they treat it like a super flex league.
Yeah, that's it. I'd be curious to know, like, is it is it like agreed upon that no one drafts a quarterback? Because I'd be nervous to. I've drafted at the end, for example, in a super flex league a couple months ago, and quarterbacks flew so far off that I had to really go scrape the bottom of the barrel. Because just how the picks fell to me, but I take advantage of the QB value. Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, if you're in a 3 wide receiver PPR league and you get Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean that's an ideal situation, right? Like that's probably a top 5 start, really.
Especially like your advice last week was know your league.
Right.
So if you know your league is not going to take quarterbacks early, you can play into that.
Right.
And say, okay, I'm going to get plenty of quarterback value in the 6th round. I'll get 2 of the top 5 wide receivers right now. And then, in rounds, 4, 5, and 6, twice in 6th, you can really just kind of start. I personally, if I'm making that trade, I'm definitely going to try to push the 4th. And it also depends on what side of the board I'm on. If they don't want the 4th, sometimes I like to swap a pick, right? So if I'm going to be at the front side of the 8th round, or I'm going to be at the back side of the 8th round and you're at the front side of the 8th round, maybe I'll swap one of those picks if you're trading draft picks. I like to do that a lot just to kind of try to get a little extra value in that trade. So just could be something that you look at. If you don't feel comfortable with that third round pick, try to use the 4th round pick first. And if they don't like the 4th round pick, then later on in the draft, try to kind of swap picks to get you up a little earlier, just to kind of help that value if you're going to trade away that 2nd or 3rd round pick.
I think the other key part here is that in a 3 wide receiver league, like the mock we did tonight was a 2 wide receiver, but obviously with flexes, you still can put your stud wide receivers there. But in a 3 wide receivers where you have to start 3, it does become much more imperative to get those guys early as well. So
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Great question, NMB. I'm going to talk through my team. And if you have any other questions, get them in now so we can answer them for you. You are very welcome. Appreciate you being here. Hit that like button, y'all. Please subscribe to the Bite Size Sports YouTube network. We are going to hit 700 subscribers soon. We're going to hit it soon. Super excited for that. Love all the support you all have for Bite Size Sports. You can get Necessary Roughness on Tuesday nights. They're a Vikings fan, a Giants fan, a Bears fan, a Colts fan. I mean, literally all the fans that don't have great teams right now on Tuesday nights. Oh, man. Sorry about your Vikings. Anyways, hit them up on Tuesday nights. And then on Thursday nights, our guys, Kev and James, Supersize Sports. They'll get into the bounce. They'll get into the NBA stuff here before too long. Let me talk about my team. I start 3 wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, Deebo Samuel. I also tack on Tank Dell for some upside and Jamison Williams in the 10th round for upside. My quarterback, my man, my one and only, right? Kyler Murray in the 7th round with Mark Andrews, who I think can have another top tight end season in the 4th round. And then in my 0 RB start, I'm taking my first running back at the 6.9 and Ramondre Stevenson. Tack on Javonte Williams and Chase Brown. Obviously, if I was going here, I would be tacking on probably, if it was a 14 player, if it was a 16 round draft, one of them's got to be a kicker, one of them's got to be a defense. So 14 players, I'm probably going to try to end this with 6 running backs just because I don't feel as confident in the running backs, right? Yeah. So I've just got to check that out. I am actually quite happy with my picks. I think so. I was my 3.4 threw me off. And it all started with Tyreek falling to me at the 1.4 because at 3.4, I like Devon Achane and I like Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't take either one of them because I already took Tyreek Hill. So I ended up taking Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk's there. Collins is there from Houston. Like,
yeah,
I have options there. I take Debo. He's the guy I like the best just as a football player. Probably not the best fantasy pick out of those guys, but Josh, let me know. What do you think about my team?
I think it's a good team, and I think that I'm trying to make sure I say this right, but outside of your team, I think there was only one other team that went 0 RB as long as you, slash right after you. I think it's team 2. So there was an, I think it was, that was an auto draft team
They
2,
didn't
right?
go till 7.2. Yep.
Yeah. So they got Harris, Chubb, and Moss, which is okay. I think for 0 RB, I really like Ramondre Stevenson, and this is a good study to do a mock to see when you do 0 RB, what are you left with? And we talked about Stevenson. I really like him from a floor standpoint. He's not going to do anything dominant, but that's not the point, right? Because when you have Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, and Deebo Samuel, and even Mark Andrews to some extent, you are going to get that elite production. So you just need Ramondre to not get 4 points a game, right? If he gets you 11 to 12 PPR points a week, even if he's kind of your RB1, he's more like RB2 numbers, you're still feeling pretty good about that. I think you're right. I think, though, the last 4 player picks, you definitely want to go with running backs to try to bolster that. But yeah, outside of, you mentioned you would have kind of preferred maybe Rashee Rice at that point because he kind of snuck behind everybody on that one. Outside of that, like, I'm a big Tank Dell guy, and I think that he's, I know that Houston's going to be tough when the season starts because there's 3 proven wide receivers there now. But I think Tank Dell is a little bit more unique than Nico and Stephon Diggs. And so I think he's going to be on the field all the time because I think you have to have him in there as a different type to those other receivers. So I thought your draft went really good. We talked about it last week. I was all about Kyler Murray as well. That's who I wanted to include in my quarterback. So I love that. I would have probably taken him a few picks later had he been there still. So
yeah, I think my only push right here is like when I take Stevenson at 6.9, the 2 guys at the turn already have a quarterback. So I'm really just banking on one guy to not take a quarterback to push him around to the 7th.
Yeah.
So that was nice, right? Like and he doesn't have any stacking. Not that I had stacking partners, but you just kind of, there are times that you could potentially do that.
Right.
And just try to push him around the turn, especially if you're playing the turn.
Yep.
And just take the running back. Not that any other running backs went other than Najee Harris, but take the running back, push the quarterback around the turn. I liked doing that there. Tank Dell, I think I'm out on Steph Diggs. I don't know. I just get weird vibes. It doesn't really seem like Buffalo has nothing good to say about him since he's left.
Yeah.
It's not like Houston's coming out and like talking up Steph Diggs. He's coming into an offense who already has 2 great wide receivers in Nico Collins and Tank Dell. CJ Stroud loves Tank Dell. I just don't think that I don't think I'm in on Steph Diggs. And I mean, Steph Diggs used to be a Viking. Like, I don't know, maybe you have a different perspective, but I think he's kind of run his course almost.
Yeah, I loved Stephon Diggs when he was here, and for all of the bad rap he got for talking all the time and seemingly whining, he did always back it up on the field, right? Like he was a gamer, or he is a gamer, sorry. And so he didn't leave on good terms here either, and he didn't leave on good terms in Buffalo. He's an interesting one because at first when he first went there, I was like, okay, 1-year deal. He's playing for another contract. He's going to ball out this year regardless. He's going to do what he can because he needs to get paid again. But then at the same time, it's like, well, he's proven. Everyone knows what he can do. So if he has some, so he doesn't necessarily have that extra motivation. So I'm not getting Diggs anywhere really either. I'm also not really going for Nico Collins that much, personally, just because there's so many guys there. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. It's hard to tell because he is proven, but at the same time, like, yeah, he, doesn't have good vibes around him and his teammates all the time. So
yeah. Is he the one that caught the Minnesota Miracle?
Yes.
God, that was freaking crazy, man.
Unbelievable. And then we did the most Vikings thing ever. The next week we went to Philly and we just got crushed.
Is that the one you missed the field goal? Who's the missed field goal? I remember a missed field goal.
That was so when we were playing at the Gophers Stadium.
Like the doink?
Oh, it was a wide left.
Upright?
No, that was the Bears had the double doink in the playoffs.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
The Vikings in the playoffs with Teddy Bridgewater against Seattle had a 27-yard field goal to win. And our kicker, Blair Walsh, missed it wide left. Just the most Vikings miss of all time.
Oops.
Well, thanks for that little trip down memory lane.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry. You're going to have nightmares tonight now.
Yeah,
Goodness gracious. Mike asks here what made me go tight end in the 4th round? Was it due to Mark Andrews being available and high upside on Andrews? So I take this 2 approaches, right? If I end up taking Devon Achane in round 3 because I like him there, I'm not going to take the tight end because I feel like I need more running back support wide receiver support. But in this case, I'd already taken the 3 wide receivers. I know I'm comfortable going 0 RB forever and always. And Mark Andrews is sitting on the board, and I think Mark Andrews can be tight end 1. I think I have the potential of having the best tight end in the game this season, fantasy football wise. He's not better than our boy Travis Kelce, but for fantasy football, I think Mark Andrews can be the best tight end, and he's sitting here at 409. And I mentioned it during the draft. I was kind of hoping that Lamar would fall with him, right? So then I just get a little bit of Lamar, Mark Andrews stack and kind of ride the Baltimore Ravens for weeks, 2 through 17. I don't want to ride on week 1, of course. I hope they kind of come out dud against the Chiefs, but week 2 on, like, let's go, baby. So that was my thought process there. Also, after I like Kelce, Laporta, McBride, and Andrews. I like those 4. I will take a Dalton Kincaid. I will take a Kyle Pitts, but I don't love those picks. I like the first 4. I don't love Kelce in the 2nd round, but Laporta falling to the 4th round, I like that. McBride in the 4th round, I love that. And then Mark Andrews in the back of the 4th, I'm going to take that. So I think it's just more of the value, but also who I already drafted ahead of them to where I already had 3 really solid wide receivers. I felt very comfortable kind of taking that first zigzag and going to tight end.
That makes sense.
Lee says team 2 is the best team.
The auto draft team, they did pretty well.
It wasn't bad. I think I'm probably taking Chris Olave at 211 and then pushing Kelce to 302.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably not taking Kelce at 302, but whatever. Steph Diggs, Christian Kirk. I don't love Harrison Chubb. I think those 2 guys are actually bad running backs, or like bad fantasy running backs. But I think structurally they did well. They did the same thing I did, essentially structurally.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, let's get out of here. Appreciate you all being with us tonight. That was a lot of fun.
That was awesome.
Love a good mock draft. Like I said, here in 2 weeks, we will draft for another damn fantasy podcast league draft. Josh and I will talk behind the scenes. Last year, I think we streamed like the first maybe 8 to 10 rounds, and then we got off the show and actually just finished the draft.
Okay.
So we'll talk offline, maybe do something similar to that, but we will be back next week as well. Poland Spring had the best draft of all time. Anytime you can get Malik Cunningham at the 201, you're doing a damn good job. That was not an ope, but a dig. I don't know what's happening in our chat tonight. Anyways, Josh, what do you got for the people? Where can they find you over the next week until you and I come back out here next Wednesday night and give them more great fantasy advice?
Yeah, if you want to give me a follow on Twitter at JLime8. Otherwise, I'll see you here pretty regularly or every week on Wednesday with ADP. And then once the season gets started, I'll have my own, mindless ranting and raving about the Vikings. I have a podcast called Mike on the Vikes where I just preview and recap the purple, and that's where all the delusional stuff comes in. So you'll see me here, you'll see me there if you want, and yeah, it'll be great.
The mean purple. Do you do that live or is that a podcast?
So I started actually this offseason doing it live, and then I immediately put it on a podcast as well. So
yeah, that's cool.
Started as a blog as well. So, and it's fun. It just kind of fell by the wayside. Summer got too busy, so I'm getting back into it with the season coming up. So it'll be good times.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love just listening to just football shows. The Fastest 40. So our old co-host Dan Portillo does the Fastest 40. It's just a straight up Chiefs podcast.
Nice.
They just talk about Chiefs. So I listen to that every week just because it's just let's listen to the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you live there, Mike, on the bikes. Do you have an idea when you'll start that, or do you have an idea what nights that'll be, or are you just kind of still trying to settle in on your schedule?
Trying to settle in on my schedule. I have so with coaching duties now, I have my weekend nights are not as open as they might have once been. So I'll have to, I would say once the season gets started, you can expect something on Monday night or Sunday night, just as a gut check or knee-jerk reaction to the Vikings game.
Oh yeah, that's the best, right? Like a good Sunday night, you just ranting and raving about Sam Darnold throwing that stupid pick.
Oh, I can't wait.
Quarter, it really just turned the game around.
Right.
I get it.
Yep.
Well, you all can follow me on Twitter at TrevorS_FF. Follow Another Damn Fantasy Podcast on Twitter at ADP Podcast_FF. Of course, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night live shows here on the Bite Size Sports YouTube network. Check us out. Hit us up. Come join